Okay, let's dive into this. So, picture this. Montreal, middle of winter.
Okay.
And I mean cold, like minus 40 degrees cold, where your breath just freezes instantly.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I know that kind of cold.
Right. Midnight. And I've locked myself out of my house. Keys are inside, just sitting there on the dining table. I can see them through the window.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Every door, every window shut tight. Calling a locksmith at midnight in that cold felt pointless, and I couldn't just crash somewhere else. Had a super early flight to Europe the next morning. Passport, suitcase, everything inside the house.
Okay, so the pressure's really on.
Totally. So what do I do? In a moment of questionable genius, I found a rock, met a basement window.
You broke into your own house.
I did. Felt like a burglar. Then I'm patching this hole with cardboard, freezing, muttering about how I'm saving money on a locksmith. Just ridiculous.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? How these high-stress situations, they scramble our thinking. You had the cold, the time pressure, the flight.
Exactly. It's like a perfect recipe for your brain to just, short circuit.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward to the next morning. I'm running on zero sleep, stressed about the broken window, the trip. My brain felt like mush.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I study the brain, right? You'd think I'd recognize, cortisol overload, poor decision-making, imminent.
You'd think.
Nope. You just feel weird, kind of frantic. You don't even realize how much your judgment is impaired.
Right. You're just in it.
Totally in it. Then the kicker. Get to the airport. Check in. Where's my passport?
Oh, don't tell me.
Still at home. Another mad dash back in the freezing cold, car sliding everywhere, made the flight by like seconds.
Unbelievable.
And my reward. The worst seat on the plane, back row next to the bathroom, seat won't recline, 8 hours.
Okay.
8 hours of just replaying the whole disaster, sleepless. But somewhere over the Atlantic, between the bad coffee and the turbulence, this thought hit me. Like, is there a way to build systems, to stop these kinds of self-inflicted catastrophes before they happen? How do we actually prepare for this stuff?
That's a great question. And it's a really important shift, isn't it? From just reacting, doing the post-mortem after it all goes wrong.
Right, the blame game afterward.
To actually looking ahead, thinking proactively, trying to prevent the problems in the first place.
Exactly. And that's when it clicked. A bit later, I was talking to Danny Kahneman, the Nobel laureate.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I'm telling him this story, feeling like an idiot. And he tells me about this concept, perspective hindsight.
Perspective hindsight. Okay.
Yeah, it's something he actually learned from another psychologist, Gary Klein, who calls it the pre-mortem.
Pre-mortem. I like that. So the opposite of a post-mortem.
Precisely. Instead of asking, why did this fail? After the fact, you look ahead and you imagine, okay, this project, this trip, this decision, it failed spectacularly.
Right. You assume failure from the start.
You assume failure. Then you ask, why? What went wrong in this imaginary future?
Yeah.
And then you work backward from that to figure out what you can do now to stop those things from happening, or at least lessen the blow.
That makes a lot of sense. It forces you to identify the potential pitfalls in advance.
Yeah. So that's really our mission for this deep dive, isn't it? To kind of equip you, the learner, with some practical pre-mortem strategies, stuff you can actually use to navigate stressful situations by thinking ahead, using these ideas.
Absolutely. It's all about building in that foresight, acknowledging that, we're human, we mess up.
We definitely mess up.
And we need systems to help us out.
It's interesting. One reason we often don't do this naturally is something called the optimism bias.
Ah, right. It won't happen to me.
Exactly. We tend to underestimate the chances of bad things happening. So the pre-mortem is a really useful tool to sort of consciously counteract that bias.
Okay, so let's get practical. Let's talk about some maybe obvious pre-mortem strategies. The low-hanging fruit, maybe starting at home.
Good idea. Think about those little daily frustrations. Losing your keys. Can't find the passport before a trip. Where are my reading glasses again?
The classic everyday searches.
Yeah. It sounds almost too simple, but having designated spots for these things, that's a basic pre-mortem.
It is, and there's actually some cool neurology behind why that works so well.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
Well, it involves the hippocampus, which is crucial for our spatial memory. It's really, really good at remembering locations that don't change, like where the grocery store is, or the well was back in the day, or your route to work.
Stable landmarks.
Exactly. It evolved to create these cognitive maps of stable environments. So putting things in the same place consistently helps build those strong mental map locations for everyday items.
Okay, so our brain likes things that stay put. That makes sense.
It does. But it's not so great at tracking things that move around all the time, like keys, phones, glasses. They don't have a fixed spot on our internal map.
So that's why we're constantly asking, no, where did I put my...
That's a big part of it, yeah. There's no stable location cue for the hippocampus to lock onto easily.
Got it. So the pre-mortem strategy here is dead simple. Create those stable locations, a specific hook by the door for keys, every single time.
That's automatic.
Yeah, like a non-negotiable docking station. A specific drawer for the passport, not just any drawer, the passport drawer. A little dish on the nightstand for reading glasses.
You're creating reliable environmental cues.
Right. Building landmarks for the important stuff. And the key seems to be, you have to be really scrupulous about it, like almost obsessive. No, just this once, I'll put it here.
That consistency is absolutely critical. You establish the routine, and then you're basically letting the environment do the remembering for you. It becomes the default setting in your mind.
Okay, let's shift gears. Travel. Another area just ripe for disaster.
Oh, definitely. Lots of moving parts, unfamiliar environments.
So here's another pre-mortem, maybe feels like common sense now, but still crucial. Take photos of your important documents.
Good one.
Credit cards, both sides, driver's license, passport photo page. Use your phone.
And then don't just leave them on the phone, right?
Right. That's the key step. Email them to yourself or save them to secure cloud storage. Get them off the physical device.
The value there is huge if something does go wrong. If your wallet gets stolen or you lose your passport.
Total nightmare.
Having those digital copies accessible from anywhere can make replacing everything so much faster and less stressful. It's a simple backup, a safety net.
Such an easy thing to do, massive potential payoff in easing a crisis. Okay, now let's tackle something maybe a bit heavier, a less obvious place for pre-mortem thinking.
Where are you going?
Medical decisions. Talk about a stressful situation where you really need clear thinking.
Absolutely. That's a prime territory for emotions and stress to influence choices, often not for the better.
Okay, so imagine this scenario. You're at the doctor's office, routine checkup, your cholesterol numbers come back a bit high.
Okay. Common situation.
And the doctor says, okay, I recommend we start you on a statin. What do most people do?
Probably just nod, say, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe ask a couple of basic questions, but generally trust the doctor and go along with it.
Exactly. Especially when you're feeling a bit anxious about your health already. It feels like the responsible thing to do.
And this is where that proactive pre-mortem thinking is so incredibly valuable. Taking that pause, asking the right questions before you commit.
Right. And there's one specific statistic that you should really think about asking for. And it's one that, frankly, doctors don't always volunteer or even like discussing much.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
It's called the number needed to treat, the NNT.
Number needed to treat. Okay, break that down. So the NNT tells you, quite simply, how many people need to take a specific medication or have a specific procedure for just one person to actually get the intended benefit over a certain period.
You'd think ideally that number would be 1, right? If I take this pill, I should get the benefit.
That would be the ideal, yes.
Yeah.
But in reality, especially with preventative medicine, it's often much, much higher.
So for one of the most widely prescribed statins out there, the NNT, according to some research, can be around 300.
300?
300. Let that number just sit there for a second. 300 people need to take that drug, usually for about a year, to prevent one single adverse event, like a heart attack or stroke.
Wow. Okay, so that paints a very different picture than just this drug lowers cholesterol. It quantifies the actual probability of you, the individual, seeing a direct major benefit.
Exactly. It gives you the odds. Now, maybe you hear 1 in 300 and think, okay, maybe still worth it. Fair enough. But that leads to the next critical pre-mortem question.
Which is?
What are the potential downsides? What are the side effects?
Right. The other side of the coin.
For that same statin, the reported rate of side effects is often cited as being around 5%.
Okay, 5%. That might not sound huge on its own.
It might not. But these aren't usually just like mild annoyances. We could be talking debilitating muscle pain, joint pain, serious gastrointestinal problems, things that really impact your quality of life.
And this is where thinking it through beforehand is key. Under stress, in the doctor's office, 5% sounds small. But let's do the math with the NNT.
Okay, let's do it. We've got 300 people taking the drug.
Right. NNT is 300, so one person benefits.
Side effect rate is 5%. So 5% of those 300 people experience side effects.
That's 15 people.
15.
Whoa. Okay, so hold on. Out of 300 people, one person might avoid a heart attack or stroke. but 10 people might get debilitating side effects.
That's what the numbers suggest in this example, yes.
Oh, so.
Suddenly, your chance of being harmed by the drug looks potentially 15 times higher than your chance of being helped.
That completely changes the calculation, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And again, it's crucial to stress, like the sources we looked at do. This isn't anti-statin advice, not at all.
Yeah, definitely not.
It's about demanding an informed conversation. It's about your right, ethically and medically, to have this information, the NNT, the side effect profile, so you can weigh the actual pros and cons for you. It's informed consent. It helps you push past maybe that initial recommendation, the anchoring bias, where the first suggestion feels like the only option.
Precisely. You need the full picture.
Yeah.
And this applies elsewhere, too.
Like what?
Well, think about prostate removal surgery for certain types of prostate cancer in men over 50.
Yeah.
The NNT there can be around 49.
So 49 surgeries to significantly benefit one person.
Roughly, yeah. And the side effects. They're common, affecting maybe half the patients, and can be really serious. Impotence, erectile dysfunction, urinary incontinence, sometimes fecal incontinence. And these can last for a year or two, or even longer.
Okay, those are huge quality of life issues.
Absolutely massive.
Yeah.
Things you really want to think about carefully, understand the odds of, before you're in the thick of a scary diagnosis and feeling pressured to decide quickly.
The pre-mortem again. Asking the questions, considering the outcomes, when you're calm.
Exactly. Because when you are stressed, we mentioned cortisol earlier.
Right, the stress hormone.
It really does tend to hijack things. Your brain shifts into that immediate threat response mode, fight or flight.
Good for running from a tiger, maybe less good for weighing complex medical statistics.
Precisely. Evolutionarily, it makes sense. Your body shuts down non-essential systems, digestion slows, libido drops. Even the immune system is suppressed to focus all resources on immediate survival.
But that non-essential stuff includes the slow, deliberate, rational thinking needed for these big decisions.
Unfortunately, yes. That prefrontal cortex activity tends to get dampened. So you rely more on gut feelings, emotion, immediate reactions.
Which makes the case perfectly for why we need to, as you said, train ourselves to think ahead, do the hard thinking when we can think clearly.
Do the analysis when you're calm, when you have the cognitive bandwidth. Explore the what-ifs, understand the trade-offs, make a plan before the stress hits. That's the essence of the pre-mortem in these complex areas.
So wrapping this all together then, the big idea isn't really about trying to be perfect, is it? Or, never making mistakes.
No, not at all. We're all flawed humans. Mistakes are inevitable.
Right. The power of this pre-mortem thinking seems to be in the proactive part, planning ahead, setting up systems, big or small, to kind of cushion the blow, minimize the damage when we inevitably do screw up.
Yeah, exactly. It's damage control in advance. After your Montreal deep freeze incident, did you actually change anything?
I did. I absolutely did. I went out and bought one of those little combination lock boxes, bolted it somewhere hidden outside, put a spare key in it.
Huh. A direct pre-mortem response.
Totally. Learn from the disaster, put a system in place so that specific disaster can't happen again.
That's a perfect example. Taking the lesson from a failure or even a near miss and building a safeguard for the future.
And, full disclosure, I'm still not perfect. My desk still has a pile of unsorted mail that could probably hide a small animal. My email inbox is... Well, let's not talk about my email inbox.
Relatable.
It just shows that this kind of proactive organization, this pre-mortem thinking applied to daily life, it's a gradual process, right? Not an overnight fix.
Absolutely. It's about continuous improvement, identifying where you're vulnerable, where stress tends to trip you up, and tackling those areas bit by bit with these kinds of strategies.
So, okay, the core takeaway from this deep dive really seems to be the sheer utility of the pre-mortem. Thinking ahead, imagining failure.
Both for the big, scary decisions and the small, everyday annoyances.
And then putting systems in place, whether it's a key hook or asking about NNT, to prevent those failures, or at least make them less catastrophic.
It's fundamentally about developing that habit of thinking ahead, understanding how we react under pressure, and building those safety nets before we need them.
So maybe here's a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Think about one area, just one part of your life where you often feel stressed or where things tend to go wrong repeatedly.
Could be anything. Work projects, managing finances, even just getting out the door on time.
Exactly. And ask yourself, what specific pre-mortem strategy could you put into action, maybe even starting today, to change how that plays out next time? What questions could you start asking before you get into that situation again?
Yeah, take a moment. Think about what potential failure points you could anticipate and plan for. It's a really powerful exercise.